and welcome to the Safe Work Month with the 2024 seminar. My name's Gary McLean, Chair of the AMWU National Rank and File Health and Safety Committee, and I'll be guiding you through today's sessions, joined by some great presenters. Before we start, it is appropriate we do the country. In the spirit of reconciliation, the AMWU acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to the land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So just before we start, a few housekeeping items. Each session will last about 10 minutes with time for Q&A at the end of each segment. Please feel free to type your question into the chat box throughout the session. It is now my pleasure to introduce Elika Cohen, Policy and Projects Lead, and Rachel Connors, Project Officer for Hearing Australia, to talk to us about the work that they have been doing developing resources to help protect workers' hearing. Our communities had the pleasure of working with Elika and Rachel last year during the product development, which has become the prevention toolkit and a number of fact sheets you can put into your workplace. You can download for free after the webinar. So I'll now hand over to Elika and Rachel.
Great, thank you. Just checking that you can hear me. I had a little problems with my sound when I first joined. You can hear me okay? Excellent. Yeah. Great. Okay, I'm just operating off one screen now. So sorry, I'll just pull up my slide. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you so much for the introduction and having us along. It's just me today. Rachel's not able to join, but we're Hearing Australia is really excited to come along and have a chat with everybody. So if you haven't heard about us, Hearing Australia is a large provider of hearing services across Australia. So we do a lot of, helping people, with their hearing, and also a lot around prevention as well. So that's why I'm here today to talk about how we can all work together around preventing noise-induced hearing loss. So just some facts and figures. Sadly, these are really old facts and figures. And I say that because not much has changed over the last sort of, 10, 20 years around hearing loss caused by occupational noise-induced hearing loss. And so that's why we've really wanted to sort of focus here at Hearing Australia around working with partners such as you guys. We've worked with Safe Work Australia and the Australian Institute of Occupational Hygienists, and really looking at how we can all work together to really address hearing loss within the workplace. I'm just going to take you through essentially some of the resources that we've developed over the last sort of 12 to 18 months. So last Safe Work Month, we really sort of ramped up, I guess, our efforts around developing resources in collaboration with people such as yourselves, and as I said, the Australian Institute of Occupational Hygienists and SWA. And we put together, so we've got a bunch of resources. So we've got lots of fact sheets and posters, some of which you can see up on screen here, looking at different, I guess, sort of target groups. So mainly looking at employers. We know that a lot it's an employer's responsibility around creating safe environments at work. So these are really sort of geared to be able to raise awareness and help employers for them to know what they need to be sort of doing in their workplace. In saying that, we also, I guess, have sort of paired that with around helping workers also to become aware of these things so they can sort of, start those conversations with their employers as well. So these are some of the fact sheets and posters. These are some of the infographics that we also developed as well. And there's lots of different ways that we've, I guess, suggested ways to use some of these resources. So for example, with these infographics, it could be, we use these a lot through our socials, in emails, that kind of thing. And then obviously with the fact sheets and posters, having those in display around different workplaces, or perhaps sort of using those in safety meetings and that sort of thing. So these are the majority of the resources that we developed. And I'll actually go back to this one here. The one down the bottom left, they're here today, gone tomorrow. That was the one that we consulted the union. You guys helped us out with, what would people want to sort of see in these resources, and how can we make it fit for purpose? So we do thank you for your input there. I just wanted to call out, I guess, a little bit about sort of audiometric testing. Hopefully everybody's really aware of what that is, but this is a really big one around, I guess, we know that there's controls that should be used in workplaces around the hierarchy of controls, and looking at ways that noise can be reduced from the source, and what the responsibilities of the employer, and that obviously hearing protection unfortunately is overused, but it should be a last resort. Audiometric testing sort of comes in a sense that it really helps to I guess sort of determine whether some of these controls are working within a workplace. It also, so that's for the employer to be able to sort of, do a bit of a sense check of how well they're doing. If they're seeing that, some of their workers, there's changes in hearing, that's time for them to pause and go, okay, well, what is it that we need to do in our workplace to be able to make sure this isn't happening for other workers, and to reduce those noise exposures for people who have been exposed to noise. The other part is around hopefully encouraging people who are noticing a bit of hearing loss happening. If it is due to occupational noise inducing hearing loss, it could also be compounded by exposure within, your everyday life as well, to really encourage people to take action. So it's one thing to know that you might have some hearing loss. It's another thing to do something about that. And so this is where we really hope that audiometric testing sort of comes in. On average, it takes people about 10 years between knowing that they're experiencing some hearing loss and taking action. And so we really want to try and see that gap reduced, and people sort of taking action earlier. So then that way we're preserving the hearing that you do have. So that's just a little bit of information there about audiometric testing. And I know I don't have too much time, so I guess that's just in a sort of nutshell what we've been up to around how we've, I guess, helping to raise awareness about noise-induced hearing loss. And for Safe Work Month this year, we do have a social media campaign going on. So each week we've got a social media post going out. So I've got the one from last week just here. We also encourage you to download our resources, and as I said, look at opportunities to share with your team. So whether that is in a safety meeting, sharing it with colleagues, sharing it through your own sort of channels, and really getting the word out. And I've put a little QR code up there as well, which links into the resources that we have on our website. I will provide, I'm happy to provide this PowerPoint, but also I'll provide like a link with all of our resources at the end, so you can access all of our resources easily. I talked very fast. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if there's any questions. Powered through that. Was there any questions from anybody?
No questions.
No questions?
No questions. All quiet. All done.
Because it was so informative, and everyone's ready to take action and do something for Safe Work Month this year. Excellent. Good. Yeah, I can see some thumbs up.
I kind of got one question. As far as monitoring it in the workplace, is there going to be any sort of device that we can kind of get hold of that's either supplied by clients or the employer that we can monitor the levels as they go, like some sort of preventative measure?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I mean, that even being able to sort of understand the types of noise that you're exposed to in a workplace, that in itself, creating that sort of awareness can really sort of help in terms of like the action that you sort of take within a workplace. So whether it is from an employer's perspective or as an employee as well, around how you can then have those conversations with your boss. So it is a responsibility of the employer to be able to sort of measure noise and to take action. But there are also apps that you can, this is bit of a segue story, but we had an event, a staff event last week, and we have a staff band. Can you believe it? And you know, to measure the noise of the audience and see how well, you know, the band was performing, they just use like a noise app on their phone. And so, you know, those things, like, I mean, they're not obviously super accurate, but it will give you a bit of an indication of the level of noise that you're exposed to. So I'd really encourage you to, you know, sort of use that. You know, I do that when I'm going out to gigs and that kind of thing, and working out whether I should be, you know, putting hearing protection and that kind of thing. So there's certainly things that you can do within your own sort of, you know, control. So yeah, definitely encourage you to do that.
Cool.
Any other questions?
I just have one. Every 2 years, it's a requirement, you know, at least to get tested by the PCBU. But is there a once if they find something that's not right, so if your hearing's worse than it was, say, 5 years ago, is there a requirement for them, being the employer, to do something about it, or just they've done their bit and just left it?
It's a yeah, definitely a good question, and it's a little bit unclear in terms of, I guess, what the responsibility is of the employer. If there has been a change, I mean, it's more around what those sort of next steps would be. So a lot of employers that we've spoken to, like, well, actually, I guess there's a little bit of a difference. Like, some will just do the audiometric testing, and then when you have the audiometric testing, the employer and the employee should receive the results, and then it should be a conversation with the you know, between yourselves around what action, you know, sort of can be taken. Each state and territory, it's important to know that each state and territory has different legislation as well. And then it's often a sort of a negotiation. Like, we haven't been super clear around, you know, a definitive, and this is what you should do. But often workplaces will pay for the full assessment, and then, you know, look at sort of like if there is you know, if there is diagnosed hearing loss, because the audiometric testing is only essentially a screening. So it's really what that sort of next step is there.
Thank you.
I think there's something in the chat there. Continue. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Great. Well, I think that's me. Thank you so much again for having us. And yeah, I'll send through my details, and we're always happy to be contacted as well.
Well, that was very informative anyway, Olga. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See ya.
Thank you.
All right. Now for the second segment of our AMWU webinar on understanding, interpreting, and using safety data sheets, or the SDSs, provide crucial information about chemicals, including chemicals generated out of such things as the welding process. I will shortly be introducing our three experts. This session will cover the three main areas: an introduction to SDS and the regulatory framework, understanding key sections of the SDS, and practical tips for using SDS effectively in your workplace. Before we start, remember, this session will last about 10 minutes with time for Q&A at the end. Please feel free to type your questions in the chat box throughout the sessions. We have three presenters tonight. They are Glenn Brown, who's our representative from Western Australia. You've got Glenn Leary, will do the second part, representative from New South Wales, and Mark Mann, who represents Tasmania. So without further ado, I'll move on to Glenn Brown to do the introduction to SDS in sections 1 and 5. Thanks, Glenn.
Oh, thank you for that, Gary. Can everybody hear me?
Sure can.
Sure can. Excellent. Yeah, my name's Glenn Brown. I'll be guiding you through the first 5 sections of SDS. So safety data sheets are a critical document that provide information on hazardous chemicals and how to manage them safely. Under Australian law, particularly the model work health and safety legislation, it's mandatory for persons conducting a business or undertaking, it's the PCBU, to ensure that an SDS is available for each hazardous chemical used in the workplace. So section 1 is the identification. This section provides the name of the chemical, its recommended uses, and the supplier's details. It's crucial for ensuring you're dealing with the right chemical and for emergency contact purposes. Section 2, hazards and identification. Here you'll find a summary of the hazards associated with the chemical, including its classification according to the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals. This section should be used to understand the risks and necessary precautions. Section 3, composition and information on ingredients. This section lists the chemical's ingredients and their concentrations. Knowing what a substance is made of helps in assessing its potential health effects. Section 4, first aid measures. In case of exposure, this section provides the necessary first aid procedures. Every worker should be familiar with this, particularly those working directly with the chemical. Section 5, firefighting measures. This includes guidance on how to extinguish a fire caused by the chemical, suitable extinguishing media, and specific hazards that could arise during a fire. For these sections, the key takeaway is that they provide essential identification and immediate response information. If a current SDS, meaning it is less than 5 years old, is not provided for a chemical in your workplace, this is a serious issue. Workers or the representative should immediately request the SDS from their PCBU, and if it is still not provided, escalate the issue to your regulatory body such as WorkSafe Australia or WorkSafe. Thank you for that. I'll pass you on to our next speaker, which is Glenn Leary.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. My name is Glenn Leary, and I'll be continuing with section 6 to 11 of the SDSs. Section 6 covers accidental release measures. So this section outlines the actions to take in the event of a spill or accidental release of the chemical. It's vital for preventing environmental contamination and ensuring worker safety. And section 7 talks about handling and storage. This section provides guidelines on how to safely handle and store the chemical, including conditions to avoid. Improper handling or storage can lead to a serious safety risk. Section 8 covers exposure controls and personal protection. Here you'll find information on exposure limits, engineering controls, and other personal equipment required, PPE. This is particularly important for ensuring that workers are not exposed to harmful levels of chemicals. Section 9, physical and chemical properties. This section lists the chemical's physical and the chemical's properties, such as boiling point, flash point, and solubility. These properties can affect how a chemical behaves in different situations, including emergencies. Section 9, physical and chemical properties. This section lists the chemicals. Did I just read that? No. This section lists the physical and chemical properties such as boiling point, flash point. I think I just read that one, didn't I? Yeah. Section 10, stability and reactivity. This section describes the chemical's stability and any condition under which it may react dangerously. Understanding this helps prevent hazardous situations. Section 11, toxicology information. This includes details of the potential health effects of the chemical, whether it can cause immediate or long-term harm, and symptoms of exposure. It's important to note that training on how to read and understand these sections of the SDS is a legal requirement. Workers need to know how to protect themselves from chemical hazards and what actions to take in emergency. Training should be regular and comprehensive, ensuring that all workers, including new hires, are familiar with chemicals they might encounter. And that's it for me. So I'll pass you on to our last presenter, Mark Mann. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. I'll be running through the next sections. That'll be from 12 to 16. Consultation and health monitoring. Section 12. This section provides information on the environmental impact of the chemical, including its potential to harm wildlife and contaminate water sources. Section 13. Disposal considerations. Proper disposal of chemical is vital for environmental protection. This section outlines how to safely dispose of the chemical and its container. Section 14, transport information. This section includes guidelines for the safe transportation of the chemical, including any special requirements for packaging or labelling. Section 15, regulatory information. Here you'll find information on the regulatory status of the chemical, including any specific legal requirements under Australia law. Section 16, other information. The final section often includes the date of the last revision and any other relevant information that didn't fit into any other categories. Consultation requirements, it's not just having an SDS on hand. PCBUs must consult with workers when introducing new chemicals to the workplace or when changes occur which may affect safety. This consultation process is crucial for ensuring that workers understand the risks and can contribute to decisions about safety measures. Health monitoring. If workers are required to use chemicals that may pose a health risk, PCBUs are obligated to provide health monitoring. This monitoring should be conducted by a registered medical practitioner and must be carried out regularly as specified by the WHS or OHS regulations. Safe systems of work and PPE. Finally, it's the PCBU's responsibility to implement safe systems of work and provide the necessary PPE. This includes ensuring that workers use PPE correctly, are trained in its proper use, including how to clean and store, and that it is maintained in good condition. In conclusion, the SDS is just one part of a broader safety framework. Proper consultation, training, and health monitoring are all essential for ensuring that workers can safely handle hazardous chemicals in the workplace. And that's me.
Well, I'd like to thank the Mark Mann and Mr. Leary, Glenn Leary, and Glenn Brown for all their input into that SDS work. So I'd like to know if there's any questions that like to be put forward. No questions?
Yeah, I've got a question.
There's one.
Okay, so with these MDS stuff like that and different chemicals, there also should be a safe work method statement with them as well. Yeah, in regards to different chemicals can't be stored together, different, like a boiling point, firefighting, all these different things that are outlined in the MDS. But do people really understand the specifics of the MDS and what can and can't be stored together, and what can and can't be mixed together, what the correct PPE is? If it says we'll wear a full, some have to wear BA, or we might have to wear a full face shield. These are all, plus the correct protection and stuff like that. So, yeah, if in the workplace, if the comrades come up and read a SDS and they don't have the knowledge or the tools or the equipment, if it catches on fire, then they don't need to touch it. They need to put it aside and wait to get the correct equipment for that job. Like, it could be as simple as cleaners, seen it before. they go in and clean a bathroom or something offshore. They mix 2 chemicals, and next minute they got a acid cloud and something else. 2 chemicals put together that shouldn't be together. Things get shaken around, one leaks, and next minute you got a fire explosion.
Remember, boys?
Yeah, I think, Mark, that comes down to the PCBU training, having the SDS sheets available and training all the staff on how to read and interpret them.
Also, got to make sure you got correct allocation of storage for chemicals. That's a big one. Just can't be put in, if it says it has to be ventilated in a ventilated area, there's got to be a ventilated area. Can't just be stored in a cupboard somewhere, or some get affected by heat. Have to be in a cool, dry area. So there's a lot there, but the thing is that members don't use a lot of chemicals or are unaware or don't really understand how to read the MDSS. Then they need to, like the PCBU needs to step up and run classes and training on all this type of stuff.
There's a hand up. You got something? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Chair. Just wanted to add that the emergency information on an SDS must be contact details within Australia. Some of these global manufacturers will have emergency contact details that are global, but for it to be relevant in Australia, it must have an Australian phone number as a minimum.
But my point would be that regardless of an SDS, if where's the training? We mentioned it tonight. You should be trained. They shouldn't be just giving people chemicals and going off and here, go and clean this. I mean, there's a problem straight away.
It's up to the employer to supply all of that information beforehand, before any work's actually attempted. That a proper JHA is produced, and go through all of the requirements of that particular job that you'll be undertaking, and to make sure that everything is in place, so that you are properly trained. Your chemicals are stored in the correct place. You have all the firefighting, if that's the case, all that's all ready to go with fire extinguishers, water bottles, or whatever it may be. You may need a chemical shower. So it all depends on what job you're doing before anybody undertakes it, and make sure everybody's totally comfortable with it, and everyone will stay safe. If you're not 100% sure, don't attempt the job. Get all the information that you need before you start anything.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I
have a
there.
question, but sorry.
I was just going to say, with regards to that one, that all falls under the consultation even before the chemicals have come onto site. So if you've got HSRs on site, then they need to be involved in that consultation as well.
So I have a question, please.
Yes.
My name is Olawale. My question is this: with the chemicals, we talked about earlier. We talked about hearing and with the testing being done for hearing. I don't know if there should be a policy, or there should be something to put for people that access chemicals that are quite highly effective, like painters. Don't there be like a legislation where after every 5 years, or every 6 years, or every 3 years, they can go for a medical test just to show that they don't have any symptoms from, or any residue, any stuff they've been exposed to with that chemical? And at least something like that, if they have any medical condition based on that can be channeled, just like the way the hearing testing is being done.
And another one was the stone that was banned. What do they call it again?
Silica.
The silica stone. It took a long time for the effect to be noticed, but with chemicals being used in different industries, if they put a legislation like the same with the hearing, and that can prevent a future occurrence for someone that might develop something while getting exposed to such chemical. It's just a suggestion anyway.
It's a good suggestion, but what it would be is the fact that if they've given you an SDS for that chemical and you're supposedly using the PPE, their assumption is that you wouldn't get any of the leakage from the chemical. So what you're saying is what you put forward is a good thing. If you're testing periodically for hearing, if you're a painter and using harmful chemicals, it's most probably a valid point.
I can speak from experience there. I've been a painter for 36 years, and it's mandatory that we have yearly testing. Even though we use the correct PPE, still exposed to the fumes in the area and stuff like that. So the same would probably be for other chemicals. Yeah, you use the PPE, but there's times where you might be leaving the area and have exposure. Could be short-term exposure, could be long-term exposure. So I guess it's up to the people who are using these products to put pressure on the PCBU to have regular testing, health monitoring.
Any more questions?
We got kind of one. So if we're talking about like toxic chemicals and stuff, so for example, like galvanizing. So in its form, when it's coated itself, it's probably not so harmful, but when you're performing works, whether it be grinding or welding, when you're changing the form of it and it's turning into a chemical itself, would it be worth kind of trying to develop like a register similar to like the welding smoke, or would that cover under a welding smoke, or like a chemical register sort of thing?
Well, the man that can answer that sitting right there, Mr. Leary, he was involved in the welding fumes.
Thanks, Gary.
Good on you, brother Leary.
Yeah, I guess that welding of galvanizing is certainly covered under the welding fumes exposure. When you change the structure of galvanizing, it creates a welding fume fever and stuff like that. It's also very harmful to you. So I would probably suggest that you register, if you are currently undergoing that sort of work, register your details with the welding fumes register. And take all the precautions that you need to.
All right. I think if there's any more questions, that they can put them in the chat box, because we're getting close to running out of time, and then we can follow up with the answers to the questions later, I think. So what I think is, I thanks to our speakers for their comprehensive overview of the safety data sheets. Remember that SDSs is more than just a piece of paper. It's a critical tool for maintaining workplace safety. It's your right as a worker to have access to these sheets and to receive proper training on them. If SDSs are not provided, or if you have concerns about chemical safety, don't hesitate to raise the issues with your employer or your health and safety reps. But it's imperative. Like from what we've heard tonight, your health is the most important thing. That's all you've got. Summary. Thank you for joining our webinar. Remember, safety data sheets is a vital tool in ensuring workplace safety and occupational hearing loss is preventable and unnecessary. So if you need more detailed guidance, please reach out and make sure to review the latest resources made available for you this evening, as you've seen with the hearing ones. So on that note, I hope it's been enjoyable, and I hope people have taken something from it, learned. That's the only way that the workers learn from one another, because we're the ones at the workplace. The bosses don't really care. So I hope there was we take away something from it. So I'd like to thank all our speakers. I'd like to thank all the people who've listened tonight, and I'd like to thank for all the questions. So with that, I'd say see you next year.
See you, man.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks.
All right, boys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Stay
Good
safe.
night, everyone. Stay safe. Yes.
Thank you.